Hey guys, Tech and Stock here. I'm going to do another video. This is going to continue our Dark Eldar series. As always, I'm going to be doing these on the road. So if you hear any background noise or ambient noise in the background, I apologize. I am working on getting a better microphone. But I do believe this one is slightly better. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, if this one's better or not. Still trying to determine which one's better. Last time we did the transports, we're going to move on to doing the troops. Now, the Dark Eldar troops, unfortunately, you only really have two choices, unless you're playing with the Homunculi codex. We're not going to really talk about that in this series of videos, mainly because I think it would need its own series of videos to do it really justice. And the army plays a lot differently because of that. So, because it's playing in such a different way, I'm not really going to discuss them in detail. I'm going to talk about them overall in the description and stuff, but I'm not going to, so they're going to have their own video, like the racks and stuff are going to have their own video, the grotesques will as well. I'm just not going to talk about them as like your core sense of your army. So, first up, we're going to start talking about the Kabbalite warriors. So, the Kabbalite warriors, probably, in my opinion, the best troops option that if you want to play competitively nowadays. You can take them in squads as small as 5 and as large as, I believe, 20, which is pretty amazing. You can take them in blobs, or you can take them in, just 5-man units. And they all have, basic Dark Eldar stat line. You got, weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength, toughness 3. You'll have leadership 8. You'll have initiative 5. Leadership or armor save of 5 up, and 1 attack, and that's basic. That's your basic Dark Eldar stat line. Now they have Splinter Warrior Pistol or Warrior Rifles, that are basically your rapid fire 24-inch poison 4-up weapon. It's strength 1, AP 5, so it's great at taking out things that are, well, anything that has a 5-up save or lower, it's going to tear apart, just like a bolter. We can also do a very good job at hunting down monsters. So anything with toughness, 5 or 6, you're going to start seeing some good amount of wounds dished out to them. So this is what you want to use against the high toughness models that you're going to be playing against. So any Tyranid, higher tyrants and stuff like that. That doesn't go through their armor save always, but it does give them a lot of saves. So, dishing out, a model that has only 4 wounds, if you give him 25 up save or 4 up saves to make or 3 up saves to make, he's going to fail a few. He may even just go down. So, I mean, it is, in my opinion, the most effective way of dealing with monstrous creatures in the Dark Eldar army is with the Kabbalite warriors. So, they get like an A+ for me in terms of usefulness. And being troops is just like a bonus, right? Now you can take these guys in many different ways. I personally like to just put 5 of them in a Raider, or in a Venom, and give one of them a Haywire Grenade, and just like call it a day. Give the Venom, 2 Splinter Cannons, and just fire poison shots for days, hunt monsters. Life's good, you're dishing out buttloads of shots, and you got 2 objective secured units basically out of it, right? So, in my opinion, that's the way I use them. Another way you could use them, of course, we've talked about this in the transport video, but I'll go over it again shortly. But you could take the 10 of them in a Raider, give one of them a Splinter Cannon, and then, you can put them in, give the Raider the Splinter Rack, so they all get twin link weapons, and, a Dark Lance or a Disintegrator Cannon, probably a Dark Lance, so you can pop vehicles as well. And, just keep them safe in there, fire buttloads of shots, and keep them alive long enough that they can dish out enough firepower to take down whatever they need to take down. Now, that way obviously is a little more expensive to do so, and, it's going to be good in certain situations where, you're dealing with a lot of toughness value models. However, in my opinion, in this edition of Warhammer, there's very few toughness value targets to even fire at nowadays. Almost everybody puts things in transports now. Very few people are running models across the table. Any good opponent won't be doing that for the most part. And Unfortunately, the usefulness of putting 10 of them in a raider isn't quite there, in my opinion. It's definitely a good thing to do, don't get me wrong. It's just that it's not always going to work out for you in many games, because a lot of matchups, there's very few people doing that, you know. And in my opinion, having 2 splinter cannons on the vehicle itself works out to being almost the same amount of shots anyway, sometimes even more. And you know, it just makes more sense, in my opinion, to do that. But anyway, it's your call. Whatever one you like doing, I'd say do that one. Both things are great options. If you have the points to put them in a raider, and you know what, you're like, you know what, I don't like Venoms because they're just 2 hull points. I like having the 3 hull points and being able to do the night shields. And I can see your point in your argument there, so I wouldn't think less of anybody who decided to take them that route. I just prefer them in a Venom, is all. So, yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the dark. Like, if you're going to take them as a troop. Now, obviously, you could take them in a larger squad. You could take them in a squad of 20, and then march them across the table. And in this case, you can give them 2 heavy weapons and 2 blasts and 2 special weapons. So you got blasters and shredders to choose from, and you got dark lances and splinter cannons and whatnot to choose from. So I mean, that's always an okay option if you're going to go with like the horde kind of Dark Eldar sort of army. So if you're going to be going, you know, I'm going to take 60 Dark Eldar warriors and, you know, somehow make them all fearless, and they're going to be marching at you and shooting all kinds of weapons at you, splinter rifles, and, you know, they're going to have blasters to take care of your vehicles, and they're going to have splinter cannons to take care of your infantry, and they're just going to be a thorn in your side. And if you do want to eventually charge them, you know, I'll put some sort of combat killy character in each of them, like, you know, maybe I'll put an Archon in one and a Succubus in another, and you're going to have problems dealing with it. You know, I could see that. But again, I feel that it's a lot of points to do that, and their effectiveness is going to be they're not going to be as effective as if you just took, you know, a bunch of them in Raiders and a bunch of them in Venoms, in my opinion. But I mean, again, it's up to you, how you feel your Dark Eldar army and how you choose to feel like your Dark Eldar army wants to play is totally up to you. I mean, theoretically, you could always do like the army I've seen it online, I've seen people try it, where it's going to go, they run like things like, you know, buttloads of warriors, they run like 60 warriors, they run like 20-30 Hellions, they run like, you know, 15 Dark Eldar jet bikes or 20 Dark Eldar jet bikes, and then they run things like Ravagers and stuff to take care of armor and whatnot from long range. And you know what, that's an okay way to play. I mean, it's not a very competitive way in my opinion, but it would be fun, and I could see how you could do a lot of game matchups that could be very interesting, like, and fluffy with that kind of a list. However, I'm focusing mainly on the tactical, most optimal way of playing Dark Eldar, so you know, that's what these videos are kind of all about, right? So the next thing you can do with your warriors is I'm going to talk about them now. I wasn't going to, but you can make them Trueborn. So for an additional 3 points, you can make each warrior a Trueborn model. What this is going to do is basically turn them into a sergeant. They're going to have an extra attack and an extra leadership when you do this. Additionally, you're able to upgrade up to 4 of them with a special weapon now, which is pretty nice. You're also able to take, I think, more heavy weapons, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember if you can take multiple heavy weapons. I think you can, but either way, I would probably more lean towards the special weapons. And this is kind of interesting. This is kind of a nice thing to do. Another good way of getting Dark Lances kind of in your army, or, you know, if you want to just start obliterating infantry, this could be a good way to do it. What you could do is you could take a unit of 5, make all of them Trueborn, and then you can take 4 blasters or shredders. Now, a blaster is basically just an 18-inch Dark Lance, so it's 18 inches with strength 8 AP2 lance. So yeah, pretty damn good. No downside there. Half decent range considering what it is. I mean, it's definitely farther range than a melt-a-gun, right? So I mean, and it's an assault type weapon, right? So you can move and shoot it. It's not a big deal. You're not going to have to sit still to snap fire it, which is pretty good. You know, if you wanted to take these guys and put them inside of, I don't know, like a Raider, you know, you're basically getting, you know, 5 Dark Lance shots out of that Raider. If you wanted to, you could even take the unit even 10 big, and then still give it splinter racks, and then all the guys with splinter weapons are still going to be able to get their twin link splinter racks. You You know, they're going to want to get in close anyway. They're going to get a lot of shots. I mean, even if there's only 6 of them with splinter rifles, you know, they're going to still get a pile of shots. I mean, like, you're talking about 12 shots twin linked. That's still a hefty amount of shots into a unit. Even a monstrous creature is going to take 1 or 2 wounds from that, especially when you consider the fact that it'll be twin linked. So, you know, you got a double threat there. The unit becomes this sort of multi-purpose tool. Alternatively, you can always just, you know, put it again in a venom, and this is probably what I would do personally. I would take 5 of them, give them 5 blasters, put them in a venom, give the venom 2 splinter or venom cannons. That way, you're still getting the 12 shots out of the splinter cannon, and you're going to get the you're still going to get all the dark lances, right? So that'll be a very deadly unit, and it'll probably get focused down. So, you know, you're going to have to keep it safe, you know, hidden and behind stuff. But, you know, if I were to take this, I'd probably take them in multiples. I wouldn't just take 1 of them. I'd probably take 2, just for the sheer fact that you're going to want to have one of these basically survive for a long period of time so it can get their points back. But overall, the unit will be quite expensive. If you compare it to, for example, a unit of warriors in a venom, the unit of warriors in a venom only work out to be like 110 points or something like that, versus where you're looking at this, you're looking at probably an additional 75 points. So you're about 175 points, maybe closer to 200. So you're playing almost 100 points, I would say, on average for this unit. And that's a lot of points. Especially when you consider the fact that, you know, the Dark Lances can only fire, or the blasters can only fire if the vehicle moves 6. If you move 12, you can only snap fire with them. So, you know, it's going to be a little tricky sometimes to get in position in time to do something. What you're probably going to end up being forced to do sometimes with this unit is you're going to have to go like 12 inches, you know, fire, or maybe even flat out, get in position, you know, move up 6 inches. Maybe you're still not in position. Maybe you're still not within 18 inches of it. You might have to get the guys out, move them an additional 6 inches, and then fire all your blasters. Now, theoretically, this should kill just about anything. I mean, 4 Dark Lances, you know, is pretty substantial to take as firepower from something. I mean, even a Land Raider is going to feel a lot of pain from this. There's very few vehicles that'll survive it. Any Dark Elf or even any Necron Battle Barge is going to take some serious damage from this. An Imperial Knight, again, would also feel some serious punishment from this thing if you dropped it out in the right place at the right time. Which is pretty substantial if you think about how many points. The unit isn't that many points. I mean, yeah, it's almost 200 points for this unit. But I mean, I've had lots of units that are less killy that are more points than this unit. So it is a definitely good option, and I think it's something worth considering when you're taking your Dark Eldar. And it's nice because they have all power from pain as well. So you know what, they do become slightly more effective as the game goes on. Right, they're going to get feel no pain and stuff. So I mean, provided you can grant them a cover save, you may just get a 4-up or a 5-up cover save followed by a 5-up feel no pain. They're not that vulnerable, right? I mean, yes, they're going to die for sure, but, you know, they're not that bad. And if they do end up in combat, you know, they're not going to be completely useless. Like, they do have 2 attacks at initiative 5. So they're not terrible, right? So, out of these guys, I give them probably a B. B minus probably. Only because they are pretty expensive. And unfortunately, there's just better things to tank, in my opinion, being Scourges and stuff. And also because they're an elite choice, it makes your troops elite. They lose a point there because, unfortunately, I wish these guys could still stay in the troop slot while paying extra points. If these guys were able to stay troops, I think Dark Eldar would be very, very powerful. I think these guys would get an A++ and be probably one of the most powerful units in the game if they did so. But again, that's my opinion. I feel that they could have been, if they stayed as troops and were objectives secured, I would take these guys on the masses. I would take like 5-6 units of these guys in different combinations with shredders and blasters, and it would be fun, right? I don't think that when I say something like that, like when I say, hey guys, I think they should be troops, I'm not saying that because I want to be cheesy and I want to be a dick. I'm saying because it would be a lot more fun. It would put more fun in the army because it gives you more options to do things with your army. Versus where right now, the Dark Eldar, you don't have very many troop options, and all you can really do is go, okay, warriors in a Venom, warriors in a Raider, witches in a Raider, witches in a Venom. Which do I do? Well, really, it's up to you. But there's very few, they're all kind of like they're all kind of flavorless, right? They're just like, yeah, we all know what warriors do. Your opponent knows what warriors do because they're what they always see, right? Your opponent knows what witches do because they always see them, right? They're the only two choices, right? So if they're played against Dark Eldar any number of times, they've seen those models, they know what they do, and they're not going to be any kind of surprise to them, right? So that's the only downside to them. That's the only thing I don't like about them. So we'll move on from the warriors. I think that's enough said, and the Trueborn, and we'll move on to the witches. Now, the witches, in my opinion, have fallen so far from grace in this book, and if you read the old book, you'll know what I mean. The old book, they used to have haywire grenades. They used to be fantastic. There was like almost no downside to them, other than the simple fact that they used to die when they got shot at. But with the army getting better overall because of power from pain getting way better, now that you don't have to kill stuff to actually get bonuses, it just sort of happens. That's really nice. But the witches lost all their haywire grenades, so they kind of lost their main purpose in life. What we used to use them for as Dark Eldar players and before was, you charge them into a tank or a dreadnought or anything really, a super heavy even at this point. And okay, on 2s it goes boom, right? And a Land Raider would be gone like that. A dreadnought would be gone like that. Now, I believe the most you can do, I think you can give 2 of them haywire grenades. Or no, only one. Yeah, I still think only you can give 1 of them haywire grenades. And I guess if you gave them a character with haywire grenades, you can maybe get 2 haywire grenades in there. But, I still think it's good to take the haywire grenade as a paid point thing. But I don't see the witches being something where you're going to hunt vehicles with anymore. Unfortunately, they're just not going to. They lack the sheer number of hits that they could have done before with the haywire grenades that they do now. So I don't see you ever using these guys to hunt vehicles. So what you're going to have to do with them now is going to be different things. And unfortunately, this is again my opinion, guys. So if you like witches and you like using witches, I'm going to basically rip them apart right now, kind of but I'm going to give you reasons why. So the witches, they're basically more points than a warrior, and you get combat drugs. Now, this is the first unit that I've talked about that has combat drugs, so we'll talk a little bit about combat drugs right now. So combat drugs are basically at the beginning of the game, you roll a dice for every unit that has combat drugs, and it's basically a random stat. You either get toughness or strength or initiative or leadership or an attack, I believe, and basically you'll have that for the rest of the game. Now that's great, that's a nice little bonus, but for the most part, if you get something like initiative, it probably doesn't matter. If you're getting something like leadership, it's really not that useful, although sometimes I guess it could be. If you're getting toughness, yeah, toughness is probably going to be useful almost all the time. If you're getting strength, yeah, strength is pretty much useful for them pretty much all the time because, they're good. And I think the other one is weapon skill. So yeah, weapon skill I can see being pretty useful. At least you're hitting on 3s now. It's not bad, right? However, because you don't get to choose this, it's just something you roll for, it's really unfortunate that it's not going to be reliable. Realistically, I would pretty much always give them +1 strength because of a couple of reasons, that we'll get into. But realistically, for the witches in particular, I would give them +1 strength or +1 weapon skill almost always because, they're a combat unit. They want to be able to hit stuff. They want to be able to wound stuff. That's just going to make it easier, right? Now, they also get Furious Charge on the power from pain table on turn 4, so strength isn't always going to. That's why I say sometimes take weapon skill over strength. Just because if you're dealing with Imperial Guard or other Eldar, for example, strength isn't as useful, and you're going to be at +1 strength on the charge eventually anyway. So wounding them on 3s is pretty much fine. Them hitting you on 4s, and you hitting them on 3s is probably better. But unfortunately, you can't choose this, right? You can't be like, yeah, this is what I want, It's same thing, and this is why, the power from pain thing, I don't consider it worth any points. Most upgrades and things like that are things that models are given. I consider worth some points. This thing isn't worth no more than 1 point per model. It's not worth more than that. Even at 1 point per model, I probably wouldn't pay for this upgrade because it's so random and it's so situationally useless most of the time. Like, there's only 3 chances at you getting something half decent. So you have like basically, a 50-50 chance of this thing even being useful. Otherwise, it's going to be almost completely worthless. And that's just sad, right? It just sucks. Now, I know this is the way combat drugs have been for a while, but, before combat drugs, we're just kind of a bonus thing that was like, yeah, whatever, they get combat drugs, sure, whatever. And now it's like, oh, well, yeah, I got +1 initiative again. Well, that's pretty much useless. It's not like you get a chance to re-roll this, or you can't modify it in any way. If there was I would really have loved to see like a character or something like a succubus just be like, yeah, for your power from pain rolls, you get to elect up to 3 units. They get to choose from the combat drugs that they want to use, and that would have been awesome. Unfortunately, there's nothing like that in the codex, and it's just random, right? So that's the first thing I don't like about the witches, that they come with combat drugs, and you can tell that it's worked into their points because there are more points than warriors, and they shouldn't be because they're much worse than warriors. So basically, a witch has the exact same stat line as a warrior, except for the fact that it has initiative 6 and it has a 6-up armor save. So you're trading an armor save for an initiative there, but they do have an ability called dodge. So what dodge does is when they come into close combat, they have a 4-up invulnerable save, but only in close combat. So, that's pretty nice. It is probably their only redeeming quality that the unit actually has, and the only reason why you would ever take them, because a 4-up invulnerable save in close combat is pretty good. You can use them for things like tying up Terminators. You can use them for tying up things that are going to cut through, your incubi that you don't want the incubi to fight, for example. You can soften them up with witches first. The only downside to doing this, unfortunately, is because the witches, they do have 1 attack still base, and they do have, close combat weapon and pistol. So they do have 2 attacks base, but they are still, remember, only strength and toughness 3. So, they're only weapon skill 4 as well most of the time. Obviously these stats can go up, but again, you can't rely on them. Sometimes you're going to have +1 initiative or +1 leadership, and there's nothing you can do about that. And so what you do is, like say you charge into a unit of 10 Terminators. The 10 Terminators are going to go last, so you're going to go first, obviously. You can get these special witch upgrades. I say don't bother with any of them. They're all pretty much useless. The Shardnet Impaler is okay, but basically how the upgrades of the witch weapons work is you can only take witch cult weapons. You're only allowed 3 of them for the unit, and they're nothing spectacular. There's nothing that screams, oh yeah, I need that weapon. It's all just like reroll 1s to hit, reroll 1s to wound, all kind of like, is it really worth that extra 5 or 6 points? Probably not. Like, it's not really worth it. It's only on 1 model, right? So then you gotta roll them separately, and the odds of you rolling one with that model specifically is like, oh, come on, like, give me a break. It's so unlikely to happen and unlikely to make it work anyway. And if it's like your rolls 1s to wound, like, okay, so that model's got her 3 attacks. Oh, I rolled a 1 to wound. Well, I need a 6 or a 5 to wound you anyway. So the odds of me rolling that 1 to go to a 5 or a 6, pretty low. I mean, it's not, and it's just, it's not like automatically ignoring your save or anything like that. It's just, yeah, okay, sure, an extra 2-up armor save he has to make, whatever, it's nothing spectacular. Now, obviously, the witches they do have the uses, so I'm gonna get to them in a minute, but basically, what you're looking to do, if you're playing in a competitive environment and you're playing with witches, the only thing that I use them for is like for things like, again, like we said, tying up Terminators. And the problem is this: there is no way to get them fearless. Unfortunately, they're going to lose combat most of the time against these type of units. And the problem is that they're going to not be able to be fearless, which means you're going to have to pass a leadership test every time you do a round of combat. And maybe you're somebody who can pass leadership tests all day and not care, But for us mortals, the people who can't roll leadership, 5s and stuff like that, it's going to be very hard for us to keep these guys in combat, or these witches in combat, because there's no good way to get them fearless. The only way you can do it is via allies. So you have to either ally Eldar or Harlequins in order for you to get any fearless in this army. And even then, it's only going to be, a one-of unit that's going to have it, maybe 2 if you really, really want to force the envelope. Or you're going to have to go unbound to do it, right? And it's just not worth going unbound for this. It's not worth going unbound for it. Like, the only way I can think of doing this is if you could do it with you can do it with the Harlequins by the Mask of Sorrows. So you can take, like, for example, a Death Jester or a Spirit or Shadow Seer and just, put on the Mask of Sorrows, and then they get fearless. Okay, that's one way. So, I don't think that's so one unit gets fearless that way, and then the other way is you're gonna have to do some other you'll have to take like a Phoenix Lord basically from the Eldar, and basically go, yeah, here's my Phoenix Lord, he's going with the witches. And it's not a bad thing to do. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing to do, but it's the only real way you're going to be getting these witches fearless, and the only way you're going to be tying them up for any length of period of time safely. And unfortunately, it's just not an effective way to use them. So really, witches have fallen very far from grace in my opinion. Obviously, if you are going to take them in Raiders and Venoms, and send them at units that are very, very squishy. And I mean, like, very, very squishy. Like, it better be a Guardsman or like a Tau Fire Warrior at best. Like, you know what I mean? Or an Orc, unit of Orcs. Make sure it's not too big of a unit of Orcs, or something like that. If you're not sending them anything other than that, you're not going to have a very good chance at beating them. Now, the only thing we haven't mentioned is you can take them as BloodBrides. Again, it's just like the Trueborn, you can upgrade them to be BloodBrides, and what they're going to get is the same sort of deal. They're going to get +1 attack, they're going to get +1 leadership. I'm not sure if they get any other stat. They might get like a weapon skill or something. I don't think they do, but they're going to basically get extra attacks and get extra leadership. So you can take some more witch cult weapons and stuff like that. I think the leader can take the sergeant can take a special weapon. So you're able to take something, but again, their special weapons are not the most fantastic either. I mean, they're going to be, okay, there's a poison weapon, which is okay, and stuff like that. It's basically just going to make them a little bit more effective in combat. Obviously, BloodBrides are better than witches, but I don't think I would ever consider taking them, because witches are so bad. You're basically, for the points, you can get a unit of Incubi almost. I mean, like, the Incubi are definitely a lot more expensive, but for that extra, like, 6 points or whatever they are, you're going to be getting, a 3-up armor save, an AP2 +1 strength power weapon, and, yeah, it's just, there's no reason not to take Incubi if they're going to be in the lead slot, if you're going to take a combat unit, or something like that. Hell, even Mandrakes now are better, in my opinion. So it's a very, very difficult thing to say, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take a unit of BloodBrides. It's like, whoa, okay, why? And you know what, I'm sure some of you guys out there have found uses for them, and I'm not saying that they're completely useless. Like, they are going to have their good matchups in some cases. Like, they're going to be good against Tyranids, right? They're going to be good against Orcs. But at the end of the day, those matchups are already your good matchups anyway. So I don't see what the point of taking, strengths in your strengths. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason to stack up on your strengths. It's better to get units that have more multi-purpose, that are better at dealing with the models that you're not good at. Your army's not good at killing. Say like the Incubi. The Incubi are like the one model unit that shines out from all the rest. That's like, okay, you have a 3-up save, which is better than anywhere else in your army. You have a power weapon that's strength +1 and AP2, pretty much the dream weapon for a Dark Eldar. And they're still at initiative 5 or 6 or whatever. And yeah, that's pretty damn amazing. Yes, they're a lot of points, but if you protect them right, oh, they're nasty. And you know what? You can deal with things like Centurions. You can deal with things like this and that. You can deal with things like Centurions. Sorry, yeah. You can deal with Centurions. You can deal with Terminators. You can deal with Space Marines. You can deal with just about everything other than monstrous creatures, right? So I can see the argument for the witches going into things like Centurions, though. So Centurions are probably the best thing that witches can deal with because, you know, their Devastator Centurions, their grav weapons are only going to wound them on a 6. So yeah, they're not going to take any kind of casualties from that unit. So, you know, you basically want to be zooming that land speed, or that not land speeder, Venom or Raider right up to those Centurions, and just, you know, get out and just charge them, and then tie them up for the rest of the game. You'll probably take all game killing them because they're going to have a 2-up save. You know, you're going to have a 4-up invulnerable, so you're probably going to do a couple wounds. They're going to do a couple wounds. You're probably going to just lock in combat for eternity. They can't sweeping advance do either. So again, you know, you can't get killed from the Fearless thing. So the Centurions, again, are a very good target for witches, and probably the best use for them in this edition. So if you are going to take them in a small unit, put them in a Venom, try them out before you invest any money into your witches, and don't get a heck of a lot. Or again, put them in a Raider, take 10 of them, play with some of the upgrades if you want, do some experimentation, see how, if you guys can figure out ways to use them. I haven't been able to really figure it out. Other than, again, like things like Centurions, there's just not a great bunch of options. I mean, they can, if you do give them a Haywire Grenade, they can tie up a Dreadnought for a long time. I mean, the Dreadnought got too few of attacks to really cause any kind of significant damage, and you still get your 4-up invulnerable save against them. But again, you still have to watch out for things like Heavy Flamers. Heavy Flamers will just tear them apart. So, you know, it's very hard to find ways to use these models in a competitive sense. So that's all I really wanted to talk about the witches. This video is getting kind of long now, guys, so thanks for listening to this video. If you like what you hear, subscribe. Please leave any comments below if you have any other ways that you use your witches and warriors. We'd love to hear them. And until then, guys, happy wargaming.